hope everyone is keeping well, and I want to riff on a bit of a theme around being able to respond in a way that honours yourself and your energy levels, and actually an indicator around that in terms of flexibility and capacity. So I'm quite tired this week, so my voice and my thoughts are dragging a little, so I just want to name that so that you are kind of clearer on what my communication pattern and frequency is this week. But that's tied into what I want to talk about. And I think it's this idea of, let's use the calendar or the schedule as a kind of a shared anchor point of something that we can all connect with and hopefully relate to. So the week is planned out. You have maybe hard and soft commitments and things that are kind of non-negotiables that you need to achieve. And then there are maybe some floating things that you haven't responded to yet, or your engagement with those things relies on you having enough resource and energy and capacity to actually engage with them. And it's taken me a long time in my kind of self-directed work and energy management to actually honour a layer of the calendar which is about waiting to see if something, if I have space for that, within myself, if I have any more brain room left to take on new experiences, meet new people. All of these things require, emotional energy, but also physical presence and cognitive bandwidth as well. So, amongst other things. So, actually removing this very kind of judgmental or critical way of policing yourself around how you're designing your week and what that looks like. And I'm mentioning here, the parts that involve possible intersection with others, or commitment to attending a space or going to an event, and actually trying to remove, or not remove, but put to one side the aspect that is driven by this need to please or perform, or that doesn't want to disappoint, because all of those qualities are kind of tied into an energy I find personally that doesn't leave much room to actually ask me in the moment, how do you feel about this, and do you feel called to this space, or do you have enough resource to be able to go to that event or go to that meeting that you said that you would be interested to attend, versus the kind of drive of should and must, and almost anticipating negative social consequences or outcomes that are problematic, when actually if we are really pragmatic about what we are pulling onto our plate, and this particularly is relevant for those of us who are lone working or are kind of managing our time individually, to understand that we need to build in choice, and we need to build in opportunities that invite us to check in more frequently, and that as we are actually curating and designing our commitments, that we kind of have a system, even if it's just internally, to kind of tag, you know, if I don't go to this, what are the consequences? You know, am I going to get in trouble, kind of thing? Because often a lot of these worries or fears that can come up are not necessarily grounded in the current reality that we're in. They're kind of like legacy things from childhood, or from a time maybe where we had less autonomy over our schedule, or we were obligated to be in a space and we didn't have like full control, or we weren't fully consensual in that process. So that is something worth considering as well, so that we can try to bring in a lens of present reality, and sometimes that's as simple as actually sitting with something and asking, like, okay, what are the consequences if I don't go? Do I have anyone to answer to? Is anybody going to chase me up on that? Is it a problem? Is it going to damage a relationship? You know, because some things, some commitments that we have are important and we need to honour those. But again, this comes back to this idea of how are we mapping out the calendar in a way that is complementary to the way that we like to flow in our approach to work. What kind of spaces and environments are most suited to our learning style and our communication style, and acknowledging that the points at which we are, say, going to an event or attending a webinar or whatever it may be, where we are not curating that space and someone else is holding the space for us. They have a particular style of presentation, they have a different way of doing things, and that can be enriching and stimulating when we have capacity, because we are willing to receive other people's energy and we're willing to, be vulnerable in a sense of stepping into a space and placing trust in someone else, that they are kind of going to do their due diligence and take care of us, and do their best to reduce harm and all the rest of it. But when we are at a limit, an energy limit or a capacity limit, it really changes the way that we feel about going into new learning experiences or spaces where we have less control in terms of curating the environment. And therefore, sometimes the call needs to be made of like, I am at a threshold point now in the week where something needs to come off the list, or I need to decide that I'm not going to do that in order for me to be able to achieve something that I'm already engaged with, or something that's coming up that I've already committed to that requires time and energy. And it's really interesting because in the business space, I do feel like we're often bombarded with narratives around like productivity and time management, and the focus always seems to be on how can we get more, how can we squeeze more out of the day, and how can we like push to move past a threshold and strive, and it's always about more, and that sort of awareness of how that can feed into or connect with parts of ourselves that maybe have a desire or a need to please or to perform or to be seen to be engaging in certain spaces, and that often comes at a cost of our our social battery, our general energy levels. And for those of you that have experienced burnout or even slightly touched on that fringe, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And that versus a kind of energy adaptive approach to how we are choosing to engage with things that we are initiating for ourselves, but also the reality of a busy modern life which has things that are coming at us in a kind of like omnipotent, multi-dimensional quality in terms of like all of the different possible channels, especially digitally now, where people can reach us and connect with us. And it's a lot. And we're talking about then the transition of digital space into shared physical space, and the differences between that, and that they require different qualities, and capacity is different depending on which space you've been more immersed in. Sometimes there's a kind of transition that needs to happen so that we can be kind of more fully present in a physical space, because we've been doing a lot of like screen-based stuff, or we've been communicating more through written word, rather than kind of in-person, face-to-face verbal interactions that are tuning into the non-verbal communication as well. So there's so many things to consider, and they all have the possibility of offering us energy or taking away from energy, and therefore designing the way that the week looks in a sense that honors that. And we can only do so much in terms of trying to preempt. The more we actually track our experiences from an energy point of view, and start to kind of build a bit of data and pattern recognition around, okay, I know if I'm going to like a busy space for an extended period of time where it's really noisy and there's lots of distractions, the impact of that in terms of how my energy might dip later in the day, kind of thing. So that just as one example then of starting to build the week through this lens of energy and capacity. So coming back to the initial point that kind of stimulated this reflection for me was also to leave enough room for ourselves to be flexible and responsive to shifts and changes that might be required. So especially if we intend or would like to go to a space, we start to create lots of justifications as to why we should do that, and why it would be a good thing, and why it would be beneficial for our career to do X, Y, Z. And we need to have enough room to also be dialoguing with the body and the emotional self that is maybe saying, I'm really tired, and actually I would benefit from a few hours of downtime between meetings to do this, to prepare me for that, rather than throwing myself into another session or another webinar or another networking thing. And actually that requires a level of energy reserve to actually be able to hold space for ourselves in a way that is listening in a respectful way to things that are maybe bubbling up and coming to the surface, but that expressively in their quality or maybe kind of further back, actually they're a bit quieter, they're maybe more nuanced, and they require a kind of quality of internal listening that is tuned in and sensitive to that, because that is by contrast to the external stimulation that we're getting all the time, that is kind of demanding fast, instantaneous responsiveness, that's kind of a bit more, direct, assertive, aggressive even. And so that's something that has been really helpful for me, is to think about actually leaving enough resource and energy for decision-making processes around possible changes that might need to happen as well. Because sometimes when we decide, okay, I'm not going to do that thing, on the one hand, there's a sense of relief and release, and we can feel grateful that we have acknowledged that need wherever it stems from, and that we have given ourselves that gift, that we have listened, heard, understood, and taken action on something. But then, if you're prone to rumination, if you're prone to if you're connected with that part of yourself that is still kind of trying to micromanage and be like, well, we really should have gone to that, or that would have been a good thing to do, and you're going to have to find another way to catch up on that. It's like, wow, that can eat into your sacred rest and recovery time, and it can be really invasive and not very helpful. And personally speaking, I know that if that quality is present, that is also indicative for me of like, okay, I'm a lot more tired than I think I am, because that's kind of like an archaic form of communication, which is sort of driving this narrative about, we always need to be doing something, and we always need to be productive in order to be of value, not just to others but to ourselves. And like at best that's a little niggle, but at worst that can be really something that erodes your your self-trust, and also your sense of self-worth as well. So it's really important to be mindful of when these things are popping up, and what your relationship to them is, because the more we are designing and organizing our time in a way that is actually honoring our personal and unique energy template, the more gracious we can be about actually shifting things around, or, as I say, having certain things that are marked in the calendar that you haven't fully committed to yet, and starting to get comfortable with that, and maybe that sharing with someone, I'm not sure yet, and being okay with that being a sufficient answer, because the desire to be like instantaneously like, okay, yeah, great. Sometimes we can actually skip the bit where we ask ourselves like, okay, what have I actually got on, and can I manage that, and have I got enough going on this week without jumping into saying yes to something before actually checking in, and that can be difficult. Sometimes people want tangible answers, and they want them there, and they want them now. But that's also something that I'm learning to build trust and confidence with in myself, like personally and professionally, is to be okay with saying not yet, or I'm not sure, I will get back to you on that, or I'll let you know, because we need sometimes to have these phases of transition where we're kind of then inviting ourselves into a more self-reflective way of tracking overall energy levels, so that we can be really conscientious and really mindful and kind of coming from an authentic place when we're responding to things. And just that it's okay to make a change. It's okay to take something off your plate. It's okay to cancel something. It is okay to reschedule something. And yeah, I felt like that for me in the kind of last 10 days has been really something that I've been kind of thinking about quite deeply, as I'm designing workflow going forward, but also looking at things that I have been doing that I've found have been working and that have been helpful. And I wanted to bring that into this space and share. I'm curious to know if any of this resonates with you. Also, if you have particular tools or systems in place that support you with this, because I always think that's really interesting as well. Everybody has slightly different ways of mapping things out and organizing things, and sometimes someone shows you a new tool and it's like, wow, this is a game changer. So I'd be really curious to hear if anyone has anything that they've found helpful that they would like to share or signpost to others. That's very much in the spirit of these reflections and conversations. I would like people to join in and to engage and participate and feel that they can offer their insights and share their knowledge as well. So please do that. And I'll speak to you all soon.